This is In Focus Christian News and Current Affairs.
Well, Happy New Year, everyone. We hope you had a safe and sober New Year.
Yeah, 2015. Who would have thought? You've even got your party dress on still, Danielle, I see. Looking fantastic.
I know, I get ribbed when I wear a dress, so there you go. But no, first up, speaking of alcohol, we've got Sue Rad and James Toogood.
Oh, yes. This was a great segment that we played earlier in the year where Sue Rad gave us some real viable alternatives to drinking and feeling awful the next morning.
She sure did, Kent.
Let's check it out.
Look, if I was to tell you that this glass of pure mineral water contained asbestos, do you really think I would be drinking it? Of course not. And yet the Cancer Council of Australia has released a position statement exploring how one of the most popular beverages contributes to... Sue Rad, thank you so much for coming today. Every time I learn something from you. The position statement revealed what?
Well, the position statement was on alcohol and cancer.
Alcohol.
And we now know that alcohol is a proven cause of cancer. Any amount of alcohol will increase your risk of cancer.
This most
but
popular
the more you
of
drink,
Aussie beverages.
the worse it is. Yeah, so there is no doubt. In fact, we've known for 20 years that alcoholic beverages cause cancer. They are graded as grade 1 carcinogen, meaning proven in humans, no doubt there.
But you hardly ever read about this in the newspaper.
Yeah, very few people know. And for example, the evidence is convincing for cancers such as breast cancer. Few women know that. For cancers such as... Throat, you know, sort of the neck area, pharynx, larynx, the esophagus, that's the food pipe. It's proven in men for colon cancer. It's also probable in women for colon cancer and probable in terms of liver cancer. So lots of cancers are linked with alcohol use. And so this position statement has really scoured the evidence to make some clear recommendations.
Maybe we don't hear about it often because it's not really a party conversation topic, is it?
No, and if you look at people who both smoke and who drink, it's even worse. The situation gets worse. Well, for example, if you're just a drinker and you drink regularly, you have an increased risk of the sort of the mouth and throat cancers by about 6 or 7 times. If you're a smoker, the same sort of thing applies. But if you both drink and smoke heavily, you have a 35 times increased risk of cancer. So this is some sort of synergy.
Together.
Yeah, they work together. Two baddies working together.
And this same principle applies to the other risk factors of cancer, I guess, does it? So
well, it can
if you're susceptible to colon cancer, alcohol will multiply
so for example, alcohol helps you gain weight very rapidly. Gaining weight rapidly in obesity is strongly linked to cancer. That's one of the mechanisms through which it works. And there are several others for which we know.
What is reported in the paper, and you do see this often, you've probably heard about it yourself, and that is, isn't it true that red wine is good for your heart?
Well, actually, the Cancer Council Australia says that the existing evidence does not justify promoting any alcoholic beverages to reduce the risk of heart disease, even in small amounts. And it basically says that the evidence is very weak and that in the past a lot of the studies have misclassified former drinkers into teetotaler groups. And, you know, when you're a former drinker, if you've already got some ill effects of alcohol, you bring them along with you. And there's also what they call confounding, some residual confounding, meaning that you might have just had a healthy lifestyle and that's helped to keep you alive and healthier, but you might have been drinking alcohol and that might still be causing an effect.
These scientific bodies are not religious wowser groups, are they?
No, they're not. So even the National Heart Foundation, or Heart Foundation as they're called these days, does not recommend taking up drinking to reduce your risk of heart disease. Neither does the World Health Organisation. Well, they've got vested interests. Many people, even some in the medical profession, dare I say, you know, own vineyards. So they need to sell wine. But the evidence does not justify, as the Cancer Council Australia says, any need to promote alcohol to reduce your risk of heart disease. There's lots of other ways to reduce your risk, such as a good diet, exercising, stress control, you know, drinking water. All of these other ways can lower your risk without raising your risk.
But there's still one burning question. Everybody wants to know how much. What are the guidelines for alcohol?
For cancer prevention, none. They're basically saying to avoid it, preferably to avoid it. And if you need to drink, the National Health and Medical Research Council of Australia says no more than 2 standard drinks on any given day. And 2 standard drinks is not very much.
Okay.
It's extremely small. But if you really want to be healthy, as I mentioned, there's lots of other ways to be healthy without having to take something that may raise your risk of cancer.
Pure, clean, asbestos-free and alcohol-free water. It's still good for you, isn't
and
it,
good
Sue?
for the heart.
Yeah, I'm going to enjoy it now. Cheers, guys. Nicely twisted, isn't it?
Want to know the answers to your deepest questions? Log on to discoverycourses.com. 15 totally free courses discuss spirituality, lifestyle, archaeology and health. Make your personal discovery today at discoverycourses.com.
Hi, welcome back. Well, I'm really looking forward to these next couple of interviews with Dennis Perry, Danielle, someone who I know is very close to your heart. I have to confess a little bit to mine too.
That's right. Oh, Kent, he's admitted. Finally, he has one. No, he's only tricking. No, Dennis came in, first interview we did with him with his ministry, Operation Food for Life.
Yeah, incredible.
Feeding the poor on the
rubbish dumps
in
Papua
PNG.
New Guinea. Oh,
Just
yeah.
incredible. And then followed by his personal story, which if you haven't seen, you don't want to miss. And if you have seen it, I'm sure you'll be staying tuned. Let's check it out.
Well, the scene has been likened to hell. Never-ending fires, burning, smoke everywhere. It stinks, the stench. But on Port Moresby's largest rubbish dump, there are 1,600 people, 400 families living. And today in the studio we have Dennis Perry from the Operation Food for Life ministry who met these people and has ministered to them. How did you discover these people at this rubbish tip?
Ken, for 10 years we've been ministering to these people in the most horrific circumstances. It so happened as we were ministering to the poor and forgotten around Port Moresby, our co-founder David Woolley heard of people physically living on a garbage dump. And we said, take us to these people. And we went straight to the garbage dump. And the conditions is well described. If there's hell on earth, we've found it.
Wow.
Living in unimaginable tragic circumstances, physically living on garbage dump.
How do they actually do it, like in terms of like where does the food and the housing come from?
The resource of their food comes from the rubbish dump.
Wow.
The families physically, you go onto the rubbish dump and they're just going through all the rubbish trying to get the leftovers. A bit like the forgotten son who went with the pigs, you know, and ate with the pigs.
Yeah.
Well, these conditions are horrific, and the food on the garbage dump is their lifeline. If they don't get food, the possibilities they would face an uncertain future. This is men, ladies and children. The highlight of every day is waiting for a garbage dump truck to come onto the dump to drop their rubbish on the dump.
And then there's a mad scramble, I imagine.
Oh, yeah. The rubbish dump is the most popular vehicle that comes in for the day. That's until we arrived.
Goodness me. So there's these 1,600 people there living on the dump under, what, sheets of tin and plastic and that sort of thing?
That's correct, yeah. They make their dwellings from whatever they can get from the dump.
Yeah. Okay.
Generally, there will be 4 rusted oil cans, oil drums, with a piece of cardboard on the top.
Goodness.
And that's home for mum, dad and up to 3 children.
Wow.
And they're physically on the dump, the smoke emitting there 24 hours a day, and that's where they live, on the dump or just at the edge of it.
Wow.
Who could have ever thought so close to Australia you'd find situations like this?
Yeah.
But it's real, and we love ministering to these people.
So this is a pretty rough area, I understand. There's a lot of criminals and ruffians, I've heard you describe them as, who live in that area to the extent where the police don't even venture into the area, and yet you have.
Yeah.
How's that worked out for you?
Yeah, look, when we went to the police to talk about going there, they said, Dennis, don't go there because they are criminals. These are the worst of the worst. These are all the bad apples in society put into one area.
Wow.
We don't go there because it's just too dangerous. But I said to the superintendent of the police, I said, well, these people need to know Christ and they need to know the love of Christ. So I decided I would take that because it's Operation Food for Life is God's program. It's His. And the worst that could happen, I said to the superintendent, they could kill my body, but Jesus Christ owns my soul.
Yeah.
And I'm prepared to die for these people.
Wow.
And so these people have got no arable land, Kent, they can call their own. They have no water that they can call their own. They've got no hope and no dignity. We need to take the love of Christ, give them dignity, give them hope above these tragic circumstances.
So, now, your ministry is called Operation Food for Life, so I imagine food is pretty primary for what you've been doing for these people.
Sure.
Is that right?
If you consider, we're inspired by Jesus' example. For I was hungry and you fed me.
Yeah.
And if you think about Jesus' ministry here on earth, he cared about people's physical needs,
Yeah.
and there's a spiritual application to that as well. So physical food, Operation Food for Life, is both physical and spiritual. When we provide the food, we take a food parcel into each of the families. We say, we come in the name of Jesus.
Yeah.
He loves you.
Yeah.
And we've set this relationship up with these families for a long, long time. In so much now we're having Sabbath schools near the rubbish dump.
Wow.
So people are coming to know the love of Christ through why we do these things. It's all about Jesus. It's all about giving what they deserve, hope and dignity above these circumstances.
So food, religious services, and you've also helped to establish a school there in that vicinity too, haven't you?
Yeah, initially we were taking some children from the rubbish dump to a school, but more recently we have now got a purpose-built school in Port Moresby.
Okay.
And this is for poor and forgotten people. This resulted from finding a lady under a house, which was not hers, teaching 35 disadvantaged children literacy skills. And
Just out of the goodness of her heart.
Absolutely, and just 2 hours a day. That's all she could do. She had no water. All she had, Ken, was a whiteboard. And then God impressed us to move these people into this lady's village. And we did that.
Wow.
And initially we just built an awning, just with a framework to house these children. But God didn't stop there. God's plans are always bigger than ours. And today, that's a 3-classroom school with over 140 registered enrolments. And we've just graduated our first 11 children into primary school without having this basic education from the Rob and Jan Patterson Literacy School. These children, too, would face a very uncertain future.
Wow. Okay.
So we praise God for that and the dedication of volunteers, because everything we do, we're volunteers, and we've got over many volunteers on the ground, led by Philip and Maureen Varkey. Philip, a former prisoner himself.
Oh, okay, because you haven't just been going to the dumps, have you? You have been visiting prisons.
Absolutely.
You've been visiting AIDS wards, you've been visiting some of the severely disabled in PNG. I mean, developing countries are sort of pretty tough already, but then imagine being seriously ill or with a serious disability. It's incredible what you do there. But you mentioned Philip Varkey just as we finish, because we're nearly out of time already.
Sure.
Tell me about, this is a PNG national who's now sort of coordinating your operations on the ground there in PNG?
Yeah.
A volunteer?
Absolutely. Philip is PNG Director for Operation Food for Life, together with his wife Maureen. I met Philip in the largest prison in Papua New Guinea called Bamana.
Yeah.
He was sentenced to over 35 years for robbery and murder.
Wow.
He found Christ in prison. Well, Christ found him. And over a long period of time, we've been ministering to Philip and those prisoners for over 11 years. And during that time, Philip's come to know the love of Christ in a most meaningful way. And Operation Food for Life have been really pleased and honoured to have been able to take the grace to Philip and all the others. And he's really come from chains to change.
Yeah.
And Philip has just been released in the last few months on parole and now heads up the Operation Food for Life ministry in Port Moresby with a team of volunteers, and every week he's out there making a difference, not only in the rubbish dumps, in the AIDS wards, wherever there is a need, find a need and fill it, find a hurt and heal it.
Wow.
And that's where we will go, and we'll always go in the name of Jesus, inspired by his example.
Boy, that's an incredible rehabilitation program for him, and
absolutely,
and an incredible work that you're involved in, Dennis. And look, I think it's incredible what you're doing, and I wish we had time to tell more stories. I'd love to have you come back to talk about your personal story too, of how you came to know Christ as well. Would you like to do that for us?
I'm happy to do that, yeah.
Great. But in the meantime, if you want to know more about Operation Food for Life, the website is right there on your screen, offl.org.au. Thanks so much for your time, Dennis. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ken.
We'll see you straight after the break.
No matter what shade of musical taste you have, you might just find something that sings to you. It's all waiting to be discovered at saltermusic.com. Fresh and exciting original Christian music from Salter Music.
Hi, welcome back. Well, a few weeks ago we had Dennis Perry here in the studio talking about the ministry he's involved with, Operation Food for Life, that works in Papua New Guinea with the poorest of the poor, people on dumps, people in AIDS wards in the hospital, the severely disabled. He really has a heart for the poorest of the poor. But I'd asked you, Dennis, to come back because we've had you a couple of times on this program, but we've never really explored who you are as a person. And the other day I discovered that that's actually an incredible story in itself. You say you've been declared clinically dead 3 times in your life, and this started right back in your childhood.
When I was a youngster, I contracted a disease which is considered fatal today, called encephalitis.
Affects the brain, doesn't it?
Yeah, a mosquito goes to a dead animal, sucks its blood from a dead animal, comes to a human being and injects that poison, and it attacks the brain and it kills the brain. Wow. In Australia, a few people refer to as Murray Valley sleeping disease because it just puts you to sleep into death. Wow. So I contracted that while at school at age 5, and during the course of saving my life, the doctors put in a lumbar puncture into my spine to start drawing the poison that the mosquito had gone into the brain, and that all that poison was being pulled out through this needle, and the needle was very, very big.
They are, those lumbar puncture needles, yeah.
And my father, if he was alive today, he said, I could still hear you screaming because of the pain associated with that. Shortly after, the doctors came to my parents who were waiting in the ward and said that I had physically and clinically died during the course of that procedure. Wow. And it was only a miracle that they were able to bring me back to life, and that was through putting shocks onto your heart.
Goodness. It wasn't a quick recovery though, what was it?
No, well, amazing. I didn't know God at that stage. My parents were God-fearing people, but I didn't know God, but God obviously knew me. Yeah. I was taken to a hospital that specialises for patients who have been affected by very rare diseases. And at that stage, it was Prince Henry Hospital, which is out near La Perouse today.
In Sydney.
In Sydney. Yep. And there I was isolated into a ward. The disease was so infectious that you could only be isolated in a ward, a very narrow bed, just sterile around you. Even the doctors and nurses used to come in dressed like beekeepers to protect their skin.
The mask, the gloves, the whole works.
Yeah. And the doctors said that even though I survived, and I was in a coma for over 6 months.
Wow.
There was little even hope that I'd ever walk or talk again. I was going to be, quote, what the doctors said to my parents, that I'd be a vegetable for life.
Wow.
Just couldn't move.
So how long was it before you were sort of out in hospital? And because obviously you're up and about now.
Yeah, I was in there for 4 years.
Wow.
And during that 4 years, I had to speech therapy, intense physiotherapy. I couldn't talk. Everything when I could write, I had to just write on a piece of paper, even as a youngster. So I entered that hospital at 5 and came out in a wheelchair at 9. But by that time, I'd missed a lot of that schooling. At that time, I didn't know Jesus.
And you weren't fully recovered till what, in your early teens, wasn't it?
That's correct. I had continued physiotherapy, both for speech and movement, having to learn to walk. And that journey was very, very, very difficult.
Goodness.
But praise God that in His wisdom, miracles still happen. And the fact that I was clinically dead, and He gave me that one gift of 3. But more amazing, I had a second experience as well.
You were 15. Every parent's worst nightmare, really. 15 years old, and you were abducted.
Yeah. happened to be in a shop. I was looking at all the others, kids on the way to school buying their snacks for.
Yep. Lollies, probably.
Yeah. And this, I saw this unkept person. He would have been probably in his 40s, very unclean. But he came over to me and he obviously saw me eyeing the big blocks of chocolate and all the kids going out with the ice cream. He said, "Son, would you like one of those?" I said, "I sure would." So he went over and he bought it. And I still remember 3 scoops of ice cream and a big block of chocolates. And he came over and he said, "Son, you can have this. All you have to do is hop in the car." And so I did. Even though parents tell you, stranger danger, don't go talking to strangers, I got in his car, which is parked out the front of the shop, and he drove away. And it didn't mean anything to me, because as long as I had those 3 scoops of ice cream and the chocolates, but when I finished the chocolate, things started to become critical. The car's still going, but by that time my parents had been rung up by the headmaster of the school, "Where's your son?" And then become the biggest search in Australia's history for this missing young person at that stage. Had been now missing for many, many hours, never turned up for school. So in the meantime, this person took me to a very remote area of New South Wales and took me into an area he obviously knew well, pulled me out of the car and commenced some of the most atrocious atrocities on a human being you can ever imagine. Pulled out his knife and then left me with no clothes, and then he went at me and left me for dead.
So he physically and sexually assaulted you, and there you are, what, unconscious? Or
Yeah, he drove off. But that next evening, some hunters were hunting rabbits and kangaroos. They thought it was a dead kangaroo, but dead Joey. It was a bloody person, and that happened to be me, unconscious.
Goodness.
And they had heard about this guy had gone missing and took him straight to the local hospital, and there.
So once again, a long period of rehabilitation, and this time I guess the mental scars as well. All over again.
I think not only that, Kent, but as they start to heal the body, start operating, putting all the body back together after the knife attack. Again, the parents said that he's lost so much blood, we don't expect your son to live.
Right.
And the doctors, the parents called the priest to come in and give the last rites.
Right.
And during the procedure, I died again.
Wow.
Absolutely died.
So that was the second time?
Yeah, absolutely pronounced clinically dead.
So somehow you recovered from that, and that's unimaginable from my point of view, but dare I even ask the third time? What happened there?
Just got back to school, and just before I was going back to school, my father said, "You've been through so much, let's have a holiday together, you and I." And we'd just gone off on holidays in Wollongong in New South Wales, in a caravan park. I was taking an empty bottle to the shop for a refund on the bottle in those days. It started raining. I slipped as I was taking the bottle under the shop, and the force of my running with the bottle in my hand collided on the steps of the shop, and with such a force it cut off my right hand.
Wow!
And the hand went onto the counter of the shop, and the lady fainted. 2 other ladies in the shop fainted, and of course a man came running with an esky, and of course the whole thing was bandaged up and straight to Wollongong Hospital.
That's a nice box for our international viewers. Yeah. So we got the hands packed in ice, and you're rushed to hospital, and here we go again.
Yeah.
But
and then during
that's not plastic. That's the real thing.
Yeah. And so the doctors again told during the operation, and I didn't learn about this later on, that I'd physically, clinically been dead during that time. But it was during that time of in Wollongong Hospital they're doing plastic surgery and more work on the hand, that Jesus came to me. He came to me then, and he said, "Dennis, I now own your life and claim it. I have something special for you to do in your life, and I'll let you know when that is." And he spoke to me as clear voice as I'm speaking to you now.
Wow.
And he said, "I've got a special plan for you, and it will be in the South Pacific Islands." And he told me that.
It was that specific?
told me that, and I said, "I don't know what you're talking about. But I take it and I accept that as it is."
Now, Dennis, if this was if this was the audible voice of God speaking to me in this way, after what you'd been through, if I'd been through that, and I imagine a few of our viewers would feel the same, I'd be telling God where to get off at that point. I'd be saying, well, if I'm so special, you know, what's with all this trauma I've been through? But you somehow seem to be an incredibly positive person. How have you managed that?
I think Jesus has taught me. I'm not a well-educated person. I've been educated in the University of Heaven. I haven't got all the letters after my name, but I have got a BA, and that's born again.
Amen.
And Jesus has taught me to have a positive outlook on life. You can choose to take your journey in life to either be bitter or better.
Yeah.
And I choose to be better. He said, he taught me that a setback is only a setup for a comeback.
Oh, I like that. You get that? A setback is only a setup for a comeback.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And you're living proof of that over and over again.
And Jesus is living proof of such a positive ministry. He never mentioned anything about what's impossible in our life. He does say this: nothing is impossible.
Yeah.
And here am I having to, with no education, I've been able to serve him in areas of high responsibility. Nothing's impossible. The word can't is only the word can in disguise. The word impossible is only impossible in disguise.
Yeah.
When you have a great outlook like that, the world's an oyster and you can do great things for Jesus Christ. Don't concentrate on the past. Thank God for it. But use the gifts he's given to you in a very positive way to give him all the honour and glory. And that's what I'm dedicated to do.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time, Dennis. I really appreciate you telling us your story, because I know you're passionate, you know, about the poorest of the poor in Papua New Guinea, and that's where your heart is to serve. But I just thought, you know, that our viewers, you know, would just like to know some of the background that's behind your passion. And it's not from on high, do good or silver spoon in the mouth sort of a background, but you've been there, you've suffered, you know what it's like, and that's why you're reaching out to these people.
Don't give up, just look up.
Love it. Thanks so much for your time, Dennis. Really appreciate it. We'll be back straight after the break.
Planning your future can be a daunting task. What you want to do, who you want to be, and the road ahead can often be unpredictable. No one really knows what the future holds. Avondale. It's education designed for life.
Hi, welcome back. Well, that's it for us, Danielle. Incredible story though, isn't it, Dennis's? Heartbreaking but inspiring.
Absolutely inspiring. And if you'd like to be involved with Operation Food for Life, or you'd like more information, please go to their website.
Yep. Hey, thanks so much for your company this week. We'll see you next week for another special holiday edition.
God bless.